Welcome, everyone. We'll get started because we've got a bit of a workshop happening where it's listed as items listed for discussion under order of business. All right, so welcome to Richard as well. Hi. We would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Gawler people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship to their country. We also acknowledge the Gawler people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Gawler people today. And I think we have full attendance, which is great. So no apologies. Any motions to grant leave of absence from anyone? No leave of absence, and there's no non-attendance. Are there any declarations of interest in any of the items that are coming up? No. Would someone like to confirm the minutes for the 11th of November, please? Would someone move that way? Helen, seconded by Diane. Any discussion? If not, those in favour, please show. Against? Carry. Thank you. Right. Item 6. There's no business arising for the minutes other than what's on the agenda, is there? No. Okay. So work plan update. Did you want to speak to this, Jacinta?
So through the chair, the committee will be aware that in the December meeting each year, we create a report on the work plan update for the year just been, and also the draft work plan for the following year. You'll notice that this work plan is similar in some ways to our previous work plans. We're starting to develop a routine about when we come to the committee for exhibition ideas, when we're doing launches and things like that. But there are a couple of new additions in there, the suite of governance policies, which will become part of the work plan. And also there's some collection management tasks in there that are in addition to the de-accessioning and acknowledgement of accessioning that the committee has been working through. There was also an opportunity to highlight the achievements of the committee and the Cultural Heritage Centre team of staff and volunteers and the community, the broader community who do support us in a lot of what we do over the calendar year. We brought you an update report for the financial year. We wanted you to have some understanding of what the entire calendar year has provided and the work that's been going on.
Thank you, Jacinta. Any discussion? Helen.
Congratulations, this is brilliant to see it all laid out like this. My question is with the work plan though, without going back to the original documentations, we had a list that we rolled over from one plan to the next of things that need to be done. Can it be explained how that this fits in with a work plan, please?
So through the chair, I'm assuming you're talking about the Cultural Heritage Management Plan 2025. So yes, so the items in there that come before the committee, some of those are simply operational, but the items that come before the committee have been rolled into this work plan.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a question. Just on that, whereabouts in the work plan does the management plan feature? I just couldn't quite grapple. It wasn't clear.
So through the chair, in the collection management 10.1, there are 10.2 both and 10.3 are both items from the work plan, but I do take the point that they're not specifically allocated a heading of work plan, and we can take note of that and produce next year's with that amendment to make it easier to understand. And I think that will give everyone who views these a clearer understanding of the relationship between the two.
Because I think it's as much about governance as actions on reading rooms and exhibitions. So the management plan, I think we need to keep an eye on governance as well, because that's part of the core role of this committee. So it's not really visible. I think it should be visible.
Thank you, Jacinta. Anyone else that wants to ask a question? Okay, will someone move adoption of the update? Helen, seconded by somebody? Yeah, thank you. Deb, any further discussion? Yes, Karen.
If I may, I wonder if we should write that the work plan as amended, taking into account this discussion. So, for example, the collection management and making sure it's more visible so that it reflects the policy document. So I think if we put notes the work plan 221 as amended, that would capture that.
So you just want to add those words to
As
point
amended.
one.
Well, I'm asking the mover and seconder if that's okay.
Diane?
Yeah.
We just agreed to put that into the work plan for 2022, didn't we? Not to put it into the one for 21. Yeah, so it should go under that one, under point 2.
That's right, yeah. Okay, let's get the wording of this then. So under A, 2.A. Yes, 2.8. Oh. Okay, so you're just adding the words as amended. And you're happy with that, Helen? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, those in favour, please show. Against, carry. Thank you. Donation of maps from Gawler History Team. Did you want to speak to this?
So through the chair, as the committee is aware, Mrs Margaret House attended the November meeting with the offer of the maps that have currently been on loan to the town of Gawler, that the Gawler History Team would like to donate those. Those maps are individually valued at above $1,500, so their acquisition into the collection comes before the committee as a recommendation to council. So there's a paragraph there about why staff feel that they would be a worthy addition to the collection. They reflect the values and the knowledge of the earliest settlers to Gawler. So they are rare maps and they are beautiful in their own rights, but as a connection to our collection and the people who were in Gawler, it was similar maps to those that were well published in their time that people had a look at when they were in the UK and making those decisions about whether to come to this part of the world. And they reflect the knowledge of South Australia that was available at that time, which is of course very different to what we understand now.
So it's nearly 4,000's worth of maps altogether. Discussion, yes, Karen.
I'm happy to move, but I think there should be a point C that a representative of the Gawler History Team be invited to council at the appropriate council meeting to hand over and for council to accept formally this donation.
Someone like to second that?
If I can.
Okay, Deb, any further discussion on that?
Can I
Karen?
speak?
Yes,
Yep.
certainly.
Yeah, look, it is quite exciting. These are really quite interesting pieces, and I think that they have a bit of a history being on loan to the town of Gawler, and I think when we are provided with an opportunity to accept a donation of this type, we should celebrate it, and rather than just accepting it and it goes into the sort of archives never to be seen again. With all due respect, I'm sure it will at some point, but no one knows, and I think we should celebrate. So that's why I've added a point C. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Helen?
Yes, I'm particularly pleased in the donation, but I love the fact that we are now linking these type of items back to the historic themes framework. Instead of just being perceived as a collection of Gawler things, now we are putting context into our collection which highlights the cultural significance on a much broader Australian framework. So again, we're coming to a point of maturity in terms of the national, if not international, significance of our particular heritage collection. So I think I fully support these coming in, but I'm particularly glad that we've made that linkage.
Thank you. Just from the chair, Karen, how would you feel about representative being representatives, plural? Because rather than just having a single one, would that be all right? Be nice if a couple of them came, wouldn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
whatever they feel is appropriate, and
Yeah.
I think it present the maps to the town of Gawler
Yeah,
rather than just present the
it'd be
maps.
nice to let the
Yeah.
Bunyip know as well. Yeah. Thank you. Any further discussion? Those in favour, please show. Against? Carried. Thank
Just
you.
through the chair, that was moved by the mayor. Who was the seconder for that?
Oh.
Deborah, thank you. Just, we missed that when we're updating
Sorry,
the resolution.
sorry.
Thank you.
I should have repeated it so you would know. Sorry. Okay, so we come to updated motion list. Any discussion there? No? Okay. Exhibitions and feedback mechanisms. Any discussion there?
So through the chair, this is the proposed point for the workshop discussion on feedback mechanisms. We've got two ways that we can manage this within the meeting. We can seek leave of the meeting to suspend meeting procedures to have that, or if the committee would prefer, we could run through the formal agenda, close the official meeting, and then have that workshop discussion at the end. It's up to the committee.
So, yes,
I'm
Karen.
quite happy to support seek leave that we suspend meeting procedures. We need 2/3 of the meeting to agree to that. Doesn't need to be a formal vote, it just needs to be a consensus of 2/3.
So are people happy to suspend the meeting so we can have our workshop? Yes, thank you, everyone. So welcome, Richard. You're on.
Hello, everyone. Jacinta, do you want to kind of introduce that? Do you want me to just carry on, or should you introduce it?
Well, what I'd like to do, first of all, if that's okay, is on behalf of the Cultural Heritage Centre team, the committee and the town of Gawler, we'd like to thank you for your work with the last exhibition. We were thrilled to win a national award for it. We've all loved the exhibition, but it's lovely to see and to read the judges' feedback on the exhibition, so thank you for that. What we thought we'd do today is I've given the committee the opportunity to have a look at some of the items from the Gawler Heritage Collection, and remembering that our exhibitions are always about the Gawler Heritage Collection. They're items in our collection that relate to that theme of music and theatre. We thought we'd have, Richard would tell us his preliminary ideas. We could then get your feedback on those, anything else that you feel might need to be included that we might not have seen, different angles. This is all very early preliminary discussion. We'll then take that back and start, if you remember from last year, we had a bit of a mud map plan of the room, and we'll start working with that via email. But this was an opportunity just to chat about what you think might need to be included, whether we're getting too broad, because that can be a trap with exhibitions, that we try to cover everything in one exhibition when arguably there could be another one down the track. So I'll let Richard talk about what his ideas were for this.
Okay, yeah, it's a really exciting one, and thanks again for allowing me to design your exhibition again. I like working with Jacinta and the team, and getting all your input, which is a great start. It feels that everybody gets their say and input, and it helps me kind of help conceptualize the ideas and put them into practice. I think one of the issues is, as you've seen all of the pieces over there, a lot of them are quite flat, and they're paper ephemera or things like that. We haven't got any kind of big objects, so we want to be able to fill that space and get people engaging in what the messages that we're trying to say. So I saw these a couple of weeks ago, and so from that it sort of came out of the blue in the meeting that Jacinta and Petra and I had. And really what this kind of exhibition is saying is not only the grand performances and the amateur productions and the music and the bands and things like that. It's the people that were involved with it, and they're all local people, Gawler people. We did have people coming from outside to do performances, but there was a lot of Gawler people there. And so everybody gets involved. It's not just the people on the stage, it's everybody else that's involved with it, which is the set designers, the costume designers, the people that design the posters. So I think there's a lot more to it. And so out of that came the concept idea of the exhibition called Behind the Scenes. So it's not just on the front of the stage, it's everything that goes around it as well. So I wrote a little kind of précis of what I think the exhibition's about, and I just sort of read through that briefly and see what you think. So we want to take visitors on a journey to the stage and behind the scenes of Gawler's rich theatre and musical entertainment history. From early days of stage performances, we can hear the voices of the actors, the music of the orchestras and bands, and the people involved in these productions, the actors, musicians, the costume makers and set designers, and how they came from all walks of Gawler life. So that's the kind of the kind of picture what I'm doing. And so to kind of bring that to life, I want people to get quite excited about this. So, you know, even when they go into, you know, come into the entrance foyer, I want to get that feeling of a foyer of an old theatrical place with the heavy red curtains and the golden tassels, and, you know, you're going through that up the corridor, and there's bill posters on the wall and other kind of newspaper clippings or something. So, you know, like the olden days of theatre and entertainment. So we're going through that, and then going around the corner, I have this idea of actually the first thing you see is a stage, a miniature stage that I'll build, hopefully. And you get this feeling that the stage is about to have the performances, there's lights on. But once you get there, you're invited to go behind the scenes, so you can go either sides of the glass cabinets and come round from the back. And then you'll see all the stories that, you know, I briefly touched on. So, you know, maybe you can go into the costume department, and you've seen that fabulous drawing of the costume that's there. And one of the things I hope to do is to get that costume actually made up, so that we can actually associate it with the drawing, the person that wore it, and then you can actually see the costume as well. You'll be able to go to the to see how the sets were designed. We've got some fantastic photographs, and maybe we'll make some models up, or turn them into kind of like a mini kids stage that people can play around with the characters on it. Also visit the dressing room and the makeup room. So maybe there's, you know, the mirror with the lights around it, and there can be lots of little kind of anecdotal messages and photographs that relate to all the performances and various people in there. Other areas that we can have is, because brass bands was very known entertainment in the area, and orchestras visiting. So I had this idea that, you know, rather than just talking about that and photographs, that we can actually have the instruments. You know, it'd be great to be able to find those instruments. And one of the ideas I just thought with, I haven't discussed with Jacinta yet, but maybe we can hear those instruments. You can press a button and those instruments, and you can kind of relate the sound of the instrument to actually seeing the instrument as well, whether it's a tuba, which I think we've got, but we might be able to get some of the other ones. And I don't know if it's possible, but potentially you could actually play your own orchestra. That if you've got 6 different instruments, if you just hold the buttons down, you could make your own sounds. I don't know yet, but I'll investigate. And also one of the things I want to do as part of this is some of the secrets of and mysteries of the theatre, and some of the sayings that we come from, like standing in the limelight. Do people know where that comes from? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, to get that bright kind of clear white stuff. And breaking a leg. When you people, you wish them luck, you call them break a leg, and where that comes from. So people don't know these sayings. So that's the kind of like a, you know, dotted around the exhibition where you can visit, you know, and find out that kind of information. So really that's where I've come from. It's a kind of a bigger vision. I've got a few themes that we'd look at. So we'd look at the amateur productions in compared to the professional productions as well. So incoming visitors, but also what the local people did. We'd also talk about probably dances and balls as well. I think we've got some programs and some pamphlets that talk about the dances that happened there. And then we talked about stage and costume design, but also the bands that came here from brass bands to, I believe, Cold Chisel came here to Gawler as well. So we want to kind of have that gamut from, you know, various serious kind of presentations to more, you know, light-hearted ones. So I think that's an overall kind of picture. One of the things that we do need to look at is the Bechstein and the Steinway pianos, because there is some talk that they might get renovated, so they would need, you know, we want to try and gauge the community's thinking about that, you know, so we can use the voting system that we used before and maybe put the balls in as well and ask a different question, and then we can, you know, use that as feedback to whether those get renovated in the future. So I think that's the kind of big picture. It would be lovely to have your thoughts on that or any ideas that I can add to that.
So, thank you, Richard. Diane.
As far as the pianos go, I sort of thought that if your idea is good about getting the feedback, but maybe there could be some mechanism there for people to donate to get them, one of them repaired, whichever one's decided on. There might be some mechanism there for people to actually donate for it, use it as a fundraiser.
Helen?
Yeah, and this segues into what I thought we were going to discuss, which was the exhibition feedback. This is a really good example of how we need to, and it will be about the pianos in specific, but more than that, and having a bit of a think about it. What I'm trying to do is, in every exhibition, I guess, have some form of invitation, besides the thing that we're doing already, which I think is great, things like recipes, and it's more of an invitation for the community to somehow feedback, and it might be through a whole range. In this case, it's going to be about your opinion about the future of the pianos. In other exhibitions, it might be an invitation that should you have any more information or objects, please see the cultural heritage. And I know in the paper that you presented last month, Jacinta, you talked about it's not possible to have a person there all the time talking to staff, but maybe it's some type of signage that encourages people to do that, so that people are not just going in to look and be entertained, but we keep making the point, because I'm not sure that all the public get it yet, that exhibition that we're putting on is linked to the things that have been given over the years and now sit in the Cultural Heritage Collection. So we're a collecting agency as well as a displaying agency. I just want to tighten that a little bit, if that makes sense. And as I say, I think we've got I like your ideas very, very much, but I think we can start it in this one, both with seeding feedback on the piano, but again, saying to people, if something in here prompts your memory of some material that you and your family have, please see the Cultural Heritage staff or something like that. Yeah, just that type of thing.
Karen and then Diane.
Yeah, just building on Helen's idea, there's a Facebook site, it's a private Facebook site called Old Mates 50s, 60s and 70s in Gawler. I'm part of that, of course, one of the later ones, one of the later ones. And it's a really interesting site because one of the administrators is a woman by the name of Robin Wheeler, and she reported after I was talking to Adrian that she came here to see a band, I can't remember the name of the band, that wrote Turn Up Your Radio. And I can't remember who wrote, was it Masters Apprentices? They came here. And she was 15 and she said they just stared, they didn't dance, they just stared with their mouths open at this amazing band. So there's many people on that particular Facebook site, I think if you were able to contact Robin or even put a private message on this Facebook site. So it's called Old Mates 50s, 60s and 70s. You've got people from the 50s still contributing to this, so they would know a lot about that history of music and getting that interaction. And you never know what you would get. So you could guide people, but you could just ask your memories of music in Gawler, or, you know, was it a dance? Were you involved in the green room or the back room, you know, in set building or promoting or printing or that type of thing. So if you've got specific questions, I suspect that's where you'll get the answers here, because this has, I'm not sure how many people it has, but it's got 963 members, but it goes everywhere. Goes everywhere, and it's really, I think they'd really enjoy that subject matter, and you'd get quite a lot of feedback. And the people on this particular Facebook site are what we call Old Gawler. So yes, you would certainly get some really good feedback. And I think you've already spoken to Mark Coleman. Yeah, so Mark Coleman is the son of Glenda Coleman, who used to be a piano teacher in Gawler. So yeah, there's lots of feedback that I think you could get of people who are still alive that would actually feed into all of those elements, more modern elements, but maybe some more traditional, and that might be an opportunity. I think a post is good. I think these types of sites are really useful. This is a really nice site because there's no nastiness in the site. It's just about their memories and sharing school photographs and those types of things. So yeah, I think it's got a good base to it. So that might be quite useful for people. Yeah, so a lot of the churches did a lot of music as well, but I don't know how broad you want to go. Do you want a connection to this building, or do you want just a connection in Gawler?
I haven't really thought about the churches, really. We haven't discussed that much, but obviously, yeah. But is that entertainment, though? I mean, I guess they used to have events, church-based events that weren't necessarily religious, were they?
They'd have debutante balls here. So Catholics, for example, would have their ball here at the Institute, and I would think we'd have some, yeah. So, because it was, for many, many years, this was the only facility where people would come to have a ball. So I guess churches always had choirs. In fact, we had a choir in the Catholic Church for years. A guy by the name of Henk Schinkel was the choir conductor for us in the 70s. So yeah, it's an interesting history. I just don't know how broad you want to go, because it's quite broad. It could be quite broad. Mm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it'd be useful to because there's a lot of churches here, a lot of people that went to churches. So I think that we should definitely include it. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Di and then Deb.
Yeah, well, Karen's just about, she's answered what I was going to suggest, that we get it out there somewhere to people that were here in Gawler, if they've got anything. They might even have something from their parents, so it might go even before, some people, I don't, but some people tend to keep all this stuff. I'm not a hoarder, but I don't have anything that valuable anyway, I suppose. But, some of the parents might have, they might have their parents' stuff, so it might even go back further. But that's a wonderful website to do it on, yeah. Mm.
Deb and then Adrian.
I just am wondering, I was listening to your description of the exhibition, and in my mind walking through it with you, feeling in the end that it's a little bit generic and not focused on some, like as we're discussing this, feeling should we be doing a decade identity or theme? Because I think for myself growing up in Adelaide that there was a lot of the church stuff during the 60s and then moving into the 70s. Then you've got the pub bands happening, going through in the 80s. But whether you say, is it just here? Also the dances. And I'm just trying to imagine how it's all fitting together, because it's great, to have the different musical instruments and the idea of someone playing, except I don't think I want to be in the room when that's happening. But do you see what I mean? I just can't, I'm seeing it as a big, broad, generic thing. I'm not seeing any kind of focal point other than music and musical instruments. And
I've got another idea. I'd really like...
Hey.
Oh, sorry.
Wait
Sorry.
your bloody turn. Adrian.
Hello. Yeah, I was wondering, you're looking at stuff from right at the beginning, right the way through to. Are you going to restrict it at all? Because, okay. Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking around. We were ending it about the 1960s, 1970s, something like that, because, yeah, we haven't got much else in the collection as far as I know after that.
And also, because it has to be material in the collection, for instance, I don't think you'd pick up cold chisel, for instance, with something in the collection other than being mentioned in the newspapers in the Bunya. It's really, there's too much in this to sort of talk about here, I think. There's just so much actually. You'd have to thin it out a lot, but I was thinking your beginning point probably might be the Song of Australia in 1859 when they played that in the Oddfellows Hall because this building hadn't been built. Yeah, there's material about that. But you could go mad and go all the way through to the modern period, because a couple of months ago I actually sat here and watched the Gawler town band, and so they're still actually doing stuff here. You know, it's like a performance, and to actually get, I suppose I'm thinking that there's too much almost like overload, and you're going to have to be very selective, aren't you?
I'd really like to hear people's voices, Gawler people's voices, talking about their memories of music in Gawler. And I don't think it matters which era it is. So you could make sense of that. But if you were able to get a collection of people that were happy to talk about what they remember about music, whether it be a dance, whether it be working in a pantomime, whether it be playing in a band, playing the tuba, whatever that might look like, or whether they learnt music in Gawler from a teacher and then went on and played in a band, or whatever it is their memory is. But if you hear their voice and you see, and if they're happy to put their name to their voice, that will really connect Gawler people to the exhibition. Because I think when you walk in and you think, oh, I wasn't born in 1857, but so what am I seeing here? And as somebody who sings, I'd want a connection to something in that exhibition. Otherwise, I'd probably get a bit bored. But that's just me. I don't know what anybody else thinks. But you know, Judy, you're a writer. If you go to a writing exhibition, you'd want some connection or some interest for you. So I think from a Gawler perspective, you want lots of people to come, and you want them to come back and see it again and go, oh yeah, I remember that. It might evoke a memory for the visitor, who can then interact in some way with their memories, whether they record their memories rather than just writing them down. They might like to record their memories. And so you get more people to have a fully interactive exhibition where people are actually recording, and then you can make sense of it and change up the memory. Now that chops and changes because we don't know what they're going to say. But I love the idea of the band. How long has the band been in Gawler? Have an earlier depiction of the band, and then a modern interpretation that it's still here. I think that's a really lovely provenance of bands in Gawler. So we have to make sure, I think, that Gawler is in the centre, and that people who come and visit, and they'll be all over Australia, because they will come, because Gawler's the oldest town in South Australia, so lots of people will come and want to have and go, I remember seeing a band in Gawler, I remember being involved, blah, blah, blah. For example, the Cameron family, who were related to the Mays, have a connection with pantomime back in the 20s. So, and they live down in southeastern in Adelaide, so they will come and want to see something related to the May family. Who knows? I don't know. But so there's lots of links that could easily be teased out. So I just think it's so big. I'm not sure if we have eras or whether we, I mean, I'm not smart like you to make sense of what it looks like that would be pleasing to a visitor. But I think people will chop and change across eras. And maybe that's okay. I don't know.
Deb and then Helen.
What I'm kind of hearing is maybe sort of a focus on the social history of music in Gawler. I don't think we've discussed that term, social history, hasn't come out in this discussion. And I think that's the connecting point that I see. I may be wrong.
We did have the social history of food, didn't we? So social history probably isn't a bad. Helen.
Yeah, several things. I'm not so, I hear what you say about trying, you've got the challenge of trying to distill it down, but the last one had decades in it. So I don't know that we should repeat that. Anyway, leave that with you. I quite like the idea of the bands because in fact, the 5 or 6 bands that existed or started did all evolve eventually into the town band. So in a way, it's a story that ends up with the current town band. So that's a history of bands in itself. If you pick up the idea that the Mayor mentioned about interviewing people, we have a very active oral history group with high technical skills. So they, I'm sure with some connection, they'd be very happy to interview, make short, high quality interviews. I'm happy to act as a go-between with that, and the group is due to meet in the next few weeks for thinking about things to do next year. And the last thing out of left field is in this building, the green room was really odd. The green room was down a vertical, almost vertical ladder come steps, and it was in the room beneath. And why nobody killed themselves going up and down that, because it was built, when they built the extension behind, there was very little room behind the stage in the Institute. So they forced them to go up and stare. It must have been amazing. And I'm sure people would have heard screams as people tried to run up and down those, trying to get back on stage. So I'm sure there are some good stories, but it might lend itself to digging out those early plans because nobody thought that in fact you need space around. I'm not even sure how they'd managed the wing entries and exits. It was pretty tight.
I attended a play called The White History of Gawler in the basement here in the 1970s. Alan Bone and a group put it on. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, it was a sort of more working class history of Gawler. It's quite interesting. If I may, from the chair, just give my 2 pence. When we were talking about a social history, it doesn't have to be in historic periods like the food one. It can be the types of entertainment. So singers, bands, drama, choirs, and so on. And whenever you want to have your cut-off point, the 60s, but just looking at those kinds of different kinds of entertainment, because it's about entertainment, isn't it, primarily? That's what behind the scenes is about. A couple of things have occurred to me. Bobby Lim has connections. I don't know, I'm probably one of the oldest here, but some of you may remember Bobby Lim. He has connections with Gawler. And we had a ball here, I think probably the last ball that was held here in 2001 to celebrate the centenary of Federation. And the Gawler Ladies Hellfire Ensemble sang the Song of Gawler at it, I remember. And we were dressed as though we were living in 1901. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of things. The other thing is too, voices, having Gawler voices singing. There are plenty of choirs in Gawler, instrumentalists in Gawler, actors in Gawler who could do, and that ties in with what Helen was saying about the interviews. Is there anyone else who would like? Yes, Helen?
The Lim connection is that Bobby Lim's ancestor was Mary Ann Lynn, Lim, who was the first person to perform the Song of Australia. So there's the link. And the graves are all up at the Wilson Cemetery. So we've got that. I mean, that's one of the reasons Bobby kept coming back, because he wanted to keep that connection to sing the Song of Australia in the Oddfellows Hall all those years back. But I also really like the idea, and I don't want to lose it, the set designers and the costume designers, particularly the set designers, because there were some amazing people who with the old oilcloth used to paint, you know, scenes of Paris or scenes of Japan from the Mikado. And although the canvases no longer survive, I just love that idea of how much effort went in behind the production. So you can do everything we've mentioned and more.
John Chambers Theatre was the name of the theatre at the Adult Education Centre, which was knocked down for the Big W complex. It used to be the old TAFE building in Finnis Street. That was the only theatre apart from the Institute, but that was a really modern theatre. And all the schools used to go there and do their end-of-year concerts, singing, doing lots of things. So there'd be I'm not sure how you'd bring that out, but that might come out with some people's stories of, do you remember the John Chambers Theatre at the old Adult Education Centre? So that would be really interesting, because that was lots of entertainment. Like you said, that social history. I actually quite like that, but I actually love your idea of bringing that picture to life, of that drawing. I just think that would be stunning. Yeah.
Adrian?
I've also found reference to the Ozone Theatre having performances as well. Huge mass. The Gawler Barossa Oratorio Choir did something in there in the mid-60s at least. So, you know, there must be lots of spaces that have seen music in our history.
Richard?
As usual, this is what's great about this group. It just suddenly goes from what I thought about it, and it's huge. So I kind of like, you know, yes, yeah. So that's it. And there's things that, you know, that it's just given me ideas. And, you know, one of the things, you know, certainly having this knowledge, and, you know, one of the things that we'd like to have is, as you said, like the different places where they had entertainment. It would just be great to, you know, even just a simple map to just show all these different places and what kind of activities went on in those areas, just to show the scope of what's there. And I don't think, you know, we talked about decades or whether, I don't think we'd necessarily need to do this. I'm thinking, I'm just going to try and mix it up and base it around themes, you know, so will it be about bands? Would it be about costume design? And so that there's kind of bigger themes that we'd probably group together. And then, you know, certainly through, you know, just taking the bands that you were saying and just telling that story right from the beginning, and they're still there. I think that's great. And also the social history that you said. I mean, was it, you know, different performances for different social status in the town? You know, where you were affluent, would you go to places here, or was it just open to all in that way?
Mainly open to all, I suspect. And that's the great thing about Gawler that has been noted by other historians, is it was a good mix socially and economically, and also across the church group. So it's fairly ecumenical as well. Although there were Catholic dead balls, there would have been invitations to the mayor and the councillors and other priests to attend. You know, there was a general mixing. I'm sure there was some schisms as well. There you go.
You just weren't allowed to go into other churches until Vatican II, but I digress.
Can I just throw in, because I'm not sure that you picked up on that, Adrian's thing with the Ozone Theatre, and it was called a theatre, is where, what's there now? The restaurant that everyone goes, the Java Hut.
Yeah.
That's really important, that building,
Yeah.
because we had our very own Haig's chocolate shop in there during the war, because with the Americans out there at Sandy Creek, they would come and take their local girl to the cinema, to the theatre, and buy chocolates.
Yeah.
Haig's came out. This is the first place outside of Adelaide they came for that. They didn't last that long. It was only probably 4 or 5 years. But, you know, in my scheme of what's important in the world, Haigs and Gawler got to be in there.
So with the pantomimes, I remember interviewing an old man called Mr. Cameron, who was related to the May family, and he talks about his mother, who was involved in pantomimes, and the whole town, the whole street would get involved. There'd be posters, everybody would be involved. So it didn't matter who you were. So as you said, they've got photographs. But yeah, and there's photographs that I think Hilda Heinrich had 2 big scrapbooks on pantomime, didn't she? Yeah, that is in the collection. Yeah, but they're bigger than that. There's bigger ones, I think. The black ones I remember. Yeah, I remember seeing them. But yeah, so the whole town would get involved. It's really, really interesting sort of history. But the theatres, there was also a drama group called the Gawler Centre Players, but that wasn't so much music. It was more drama. And that finished in the early 80s, I think. But yeah, it's just really interesting where people would perform and all the spaces. So that's a really interesting idea of where people would go and see music or yeah, perform.
Adrian.
There was some mention of social history and then class divides, but it made me think not a class divide, but an age divide, because I was looking through the minutes from 1975, and the groups that, or the artists that were playing included Thomas Edmonds, Kamal, and Cole Chisel. Just you know, and so you can see that there was probably a bit of an age difference in some of those people. So that's another aspect of social history, I guess, that you could look at. It's kind of endless, isn't it?
I suspect we'll send Richard home with a massive headache. But this subject has brought out this committee more than any other, I think, you know, in terms of reminiscing and stuff, which is good. Is there anything else that anyone else would like to add before we let Richard go home and have a strong coffee or something even stronger?
Perhaps just to reinforce, and I think you mentioned at the beginning, that we had outside production groups coming in, and there are stories of them literally bicycling up from the city to put their performances during a period when you either walked or you had a horse, but bicycles were coming in as a major method of transport. So some of the performers bicycled up to here, performed and stayed overnight, and then bicycled up to the Barossa. So, I mean, I think that's, you know, it's just, which type of surprises me, and I'm a bit suspicious that they didn't put their bikes on the train to get to here and then well, either way. So they're just lots of, you know, the outsiders coming in, but the community wanted and expected that level of continuing entertainment. So.
Yeah, I wonder how much they were paid. Probably they didn't get enough money, so they had to cycle up, but, you know. But yeah, look, there's lots there. And I think, you know, as always, I need to kind of, you know, condense it into the stories. And just kind of briefly to finish up, I love the idea of the audio recordings of them. I don't think we'll be able to do a live thing, obviously, because we don't know what people are going to say on these things and do it. And sometimes I have a little bit of concern, I don't know about other people, but in other exhibitions, that if there's a lot of talking going on, unless it's really quite succinct, people won't listen for the whole duration. You know, it's literally got to be a 15 or 30-second grab, which we can do, I think, but it's just how we work out to do that. And I think that the Facebook page is a great place to start. So if we almost had, yeah, and you were saying about the audio recordings, doing it and try and get them to organise it. So I think that's a great idea as a starting point, and we should do it before your meeting in a few weeks' time anyway.
And if somebody's got a connection to Jimmy's memories of playing in Gawler would be fabulous. There is somebody bound to know Jimmy Barnes, aren't there? There's still people in Gawler.
All right, I might just, might just wind it up if that's all right, if that's everybody's had their say. And on behalf of the committee, thank you very much for coming and for your input and for what you've been doing for us for the past and then in the future. Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. And Merry Christmas. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're up to questions without notice.
Yes, just as a bit of background, since we've last met, Jacinta and I went down to visit Belinda Lao Kay. So Belinda is the great-granddaughter of Rose Lao Kay, and Rose is, of course, one of the artists who's featured in the Gawler Heritage Collection, and her beautiful picture entitled Evening, which still hangs in the reading room. So on the basis of that, I have a question for Jacinta. What are the plans, please, Jacinta, for the future display of Rose Lao Kay and her painting?
So through the chair, when Helen and I met with Belinda, she has quite an extensive collection of Rose Lao Kay's work. And as I have spoken at a previous meeting to the committee, the Royal Society of the Arts has a Rose Lao Kay that they are lending us. So we are creating some interpretation to go on the reader rail about our Rose Lao Kay and about the Molière and the portrait of a painted lady, which we really need to have another name for because it's obviously very inaccurate. And research has not uncovered a name. So I may put it to this committee that they need to find a better name for that one. So we'll be putting some information about Rose coming up for February that we'll be doing as part of our listings at lunchtime. But there's an opportunity, I think, for us to have a Rose Lao Kay exhibition. Helen's done a great deal of research on Rose Lao Kay. She's a particularly interesting woman. A lot of her story, like many women's stories, is not known. And I think we have enough with our connections with the Royal Society and with the Lao Kay family to do an exhibition, a standalone exhibition on Rose Lao Kay. There's potentially other opportunities to do standalone exhibitions on artists associated with Gawler down the track. We've had some communication with the Winnan family about some of their works as well. So it will need some thinking about because currently we have the paintings in the reading room attached to the wall. So should we be wanting to do this, we might need to revisit whether we put a hanging system in the reading room. Now, my understanding from Helen was that as part of the original plans for the refurbishment, that was in the space, but then got taken out. So I'm intending to present the committee with a report on some options around that. Obviously, that would require approval, development approval, and some budget. But I think we do get offered opportunities to loan objects, but they require a higher level of security than the exhibitions that we mount in the Institute or the James Martin room. And the reading room, because it's off the library, gives us that opportunity. So now that we've been in here for a couple of years and you can see the sort of interest that we're attracting in the wider community and the people who'd like to be involved in exhibitions in this Gawler Institute, I think that's time to have that conversation with the committee and we could look at that. But I think a Rose Lao Kay exhibition of her own, and this is a woman who exhibited in Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide and hasn't had a standalone exhibition since she retired from painting, and it will be a wonderful opportunity, given that she was a local, to bring her back to the public eye with a collection of paintings, not just ours, but from the broader community, and there may be other ones out there that we could access. So that's what it was a very fruitful discussion with the Lao Kay, Belinda Lao Kay and her family. We got some more information about Rose and some more opportunities, I think. So that's where we're going. So that will be a future report to the committee. We will be doing our own interpretation on our painting, and we've got the Society have agreed to loan there so that we will have a small additional, but we have a potential for a much bigger one as well. So something to think about.
Thank you, Jacinta. Could you clarify the spelling of Lao Kay, please?
Lowcay.
Thank you.
And it's Lao Kay. We're having to practice this because but the family has got me to practice 6 times. It's
Lowcay.
C-A-Y, pronounced, yeah, Lao Kay.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, yes, I mean, I sort of looked her up as well when I gave my talk to the history team 2 years or so ago. She disappeared after she married a Gawler councillor. It's a familiar story, isn't it?
That has been known to happen.
Yeah, okay. All right, any further questions without notice? No, okay. Motions without notice? No. All right, I'll close the meeting. Thank you, everybody. I wish you all the best for the festive season. I'll see you on the 10th of February next year.